Hi, this is the Jeremiah Show, and I have a special guest today named Johnny Vatos, John Hernandez to some people. He is a longtime drummer for Oingo Boingo, and as well as Oingo Boingo Former Members. That's kicking up dust, and there's some gigs coming up. There's always something interesting for John to say, and I thought it'd be fun for you to hear it. Hey, John, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Mike. It's good to see you on a great day.
It is, isn't it? It's a nice one. Warming up finally.
Yeah, summer's here, and so are we.
Yeah, I think spring finally arrived on the first day of summer, but other than that, we're okay. So, John, what you up to these days? I know, of course, former members have been busy and touring, and you've got some dates coming up. But what goes on in between dates and so on? Are you just rehearsing? You doing other gigs? What's going on?
Well, we're in the middle of finally putting out a bunch of tracks that feature our new singer, Brendan McCrary. Everything's self-produced these days. We don't have a record contract, so I got to scrape my funds together and get favors and just do what everyone does in LA. And so we're excited. This is the summer of releasing new music from Oingo Boingo Former Members. And it's former members, and Danny Elfman gave us that name, because we went through all this stuff about, well, we can't call ourselves Oingo Boingo and we can't call ourselves that. And Danny goes, well, you're Oingo Boingo Former Members. Why don't you call yourselves that? That's okay with me and the lawyers. So I said, okay, I'll go with that. So
Cool. That's good.
Yeah.
He does come in handy from time to time, doesn't he?
He does. I mean, he tries. There's nothing new under the sun. And one of the things that happens is that every once in a while in history, you're lucky enough to be in the midst of a composing lunatic. Friends of mine played with Alan Holsworth, and that's a whole nother thing. A lot of friends of mine played with Frank Zappa. I even auditioned for Frank Zappa. And so
Good.
When you work for when you see all these composers, they're constantly composing. They never want to look back. And in Danny's case, he was kind of disturbed when the band started playing again because he doesn't want to look back. And some people don't want to look back because they're lazy, and other people that are phenomenons like Danny and Frank Zappa and Alan Holsworth just keep going forward, and they're always writing new music. Alan Holsworth never even remembered some of the stuff he wrote 20 years ago, and they were so incredible, the new stuff, that everybody forgot about it too. But it's we're all just playing the music that we had a great time working with Danny and doing that creative process with him. He's gone on and he's never stopped, and I'm really glad that he's out and playing again in public instead of sitting in a studio. And he's kind of gone all gonzo and stuff, which is pretty funny, because I'm an old guy, so I'm sitting, okay, and I'm glad for him. And he's still writing incredible stuff. I was just listening to one of his concertos just yesterday, the violin concerto, which I saw in one of the world premieres. And he's jumped into classical music after over 100 films, and so he's a musical phenomenon. And all the Oingo Boingo music, like 60, 70 tunes, the music is so intense and still so much fun to play. And it's, once again, it's people are getting smarter and enjoy smart music, so they're rediscovering this music through us, which is really cool. And the crowds keep getting younger and we keep getting older.
But it doesn't matter.
It doesn't, so, and we can still pull it off. So it's really good. I'm having a great time. And in between all that stuff, all the band is like always working. Steve's working with Danny, does orchestrating on other movies. John Avila is, has been playing with like guys like Neil Young. He's just being featured in the new Bob Dylan album, which is which is really, really cool. All these guys are doing great things. Mike the Spike has his own studio. You know, John has his own studio. He produces. Everybody's involved with all kinds of different stuff. So I'm really lucky to be in have such a great band of guys that you know, will still play this music.
Yeah, very cool. Now, Oingo Boingo Former Members, you mentioned you're going to be doing, you've recorded some original stuff. So that show has a lot of the great Boingo stuff, but you are putting some new material in there, right?
Yeah, and because we have a longer show. We're going to be playing in Redondo Beach on July 4th, and we're going to be doing a real long show. And I generally don't do this when we're playing big shows where people just want to hear Oingo Boingo music, but we're starting to put in the former members' music. So this show we're going to be playing a couple of Sam Phipps tunes, and Sam is a great singer. Oh no. He's one of those kind of like low bass singers, low tenor, and he's really good. So it's really kind of cool. We're gonna feature that, and yeah, we're gonna release just the Boingo stuff throughout the summer. But for my birthday this year in September, we're gonna release 4 original tunes from the guy, 4 or 5 from the guys in the band. So It'll be like our Oingo Boingo Former Members original release day.
That's cool.
September 5th. There you go.
That's nice timing.
Good timing.
You always have marketing skills.
Well, that's all it is now, is marketing skills.
Yeah, that's true.
In fact, even to make a date with my wife, you know, I kind of like really have to build it up and make sure I got all my ducks in a row, and then I hit her with it. Honey, I've made reservations. No kidding.
It's rough when you have to do that, but I guess it's true. So you mentioned Brendan. He sings lead for Oingo Boingo Former Members, and the thing that got me is he's not trying to imitate Danny as vocalist, but he's not far off. You know, the general sound is still there with him singing lead. Was that, yeah. Did you know him? Did you hear that voice and thought it'd be good? How did he get in the band?
Well, you know, I met Brendan through Bear. Bear went to a summer solstice concert up at the Doheny estate, and my daughter Rio says there's this guy wants to meet you, Bear McCrary. It's like, okay. And he was still a student at USC film school. And so I met him that day, and he goes, hey, you know, great, John, nice meeting you. You know, maybe you could help me. I'm looking for a drummer for my band, and I'm going to USC. I said, okay, I'll play. So I played in Bear's and Brendan's and Rhea's band when they were in college. And that's when I ran into Brendan, and I go, he goes, wow, you know, we were big Oingo Boingo fans. I go, Brendan, do you know that music? He goes, yeah, I know every song, man. And I'm like, okay, so you want to do some singing? I goes, yeah. So that's how we got together. So I was in his band first, and then I asked him to join my band.
Who are the original Boingo members who are in this band?
The original Oingo Boingo members, there was 8, but we have Carl Graves, Sam Phipps, Steve Bartek, John Avila, and myself. Cool. So that's 5 out of the 8. We're doing okay.
Yeah. You're not lying to anybody.
No.
That's cool. Well, a little memory on my part. It's the first time I met you and members of Oingo Boingo, I think was something like 1983. Where Miles and I had just formed this management company, and you were already signed to him, so we switched it over to this company. And you didn't know who the hell I was, but I went over to a rehearsal, and I'm telling you, this 8-piece band with all its equipment was in this dinky little room behind the dry cleaners in Hollywood. You remember that? Yeah. I don't know how how did even you get in there with your drums, let alone everybody else? It was so small.
And there's only one way in and one way out.
That's right.
It's like freaky. It's a fire hazard.
Every time I go by there, I think of what were they doing in there? But I guess it was what a member, somebody in the band's
It was
parents owned it.
Leon Schneiderman's parents owned the dry cleaner
Ah,
place.
I see. So it's cheap.
Yeah, so they let us rehearse there.
That's cool. But it was really tiny.
Yeah.
I just picture people lined up. I don't know where. I'm not even sure where you were in the picture as I came in the door, but
Up against the wall.
yeah. Well, that's cool. You know, so you're with Boingo, like you're in the Mystic Knights, right? You go back that far to what, something like 1970 something, what?
Yeah, like 70, 77, 78. I was in
Yeah.
the Mystic Knights for about a year and a half. And it was a great time because it was for me, I was doing studio work and I was all over the place, all over the map. I was just a drummer for hire. When I first did my first recording with Steve and Danny, Steve hired me to play on the Forbidden Zone, the movie. And so I played on that. I wasn't even in the Mystic Knights then. I was just a studio for hire guy. And then they heard me play with Tony Basil about 3 or 4 months later. And they heard me like 4 times in a row. And they go, man, we want this guy to play in our band. So they go, you want to play in a band? I go, what's the band? Mystic Knights of the Oingo Boingo. And they said, well, we want to warn you though, there's outfit changes and all that stuff. And of course, me being the studio hack and all this stuff, I go, what? Vaudeville? I'm going to do vaudeville? So
Yeah.
that's exactly was my mindset.
Or street theater.
Yeah, street theater and vaudeville. That was my mind, my mental thing. I went, this is amazing. So it was the Mystic Knights of the Oingo Boingo. We played Balinese music. We played West African music. We played dance music. We played, Cab Calloway and Duke Ellington and all these incredible things with outfit changes.
Mm-hmm.
So one day Danny came in and said, well, I don't want to do this anymore. We're just going to be a band. What? Yeah, we're just going to be Oingo Boingo. We're going to be a rock band. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to be in a rock band. I want to be in the Mystic Knights of the Oingo Boingo. I said, okay, all right. So I went along with it. And, being the studio musician and having great players like Steve and John and Kerry Hatch at the time and all that stuff, great musicians get bored very easily. And one of the things that Danny is a writing alcoholic, a writeaholic. He just writes and writes and writes and writes and writes. So we were always constantly learning new music. Whenever we went in to record an album, we'd had like 30 songs and we had to pick out 12, So it was very exciting and really intense and totally a lot of fun. So not having all the outfit changes and not having Danny grumbling about, well, what happened to the dinosaur suit? Well, who's going to be playing this? It was good. He was the way.
If you're saying rock band, and I once asked him, I said, how do we describe you? And he said pop band, but neither one of those labels. I think it's just we have to come up with a new label to describe what you guys were doing, because it was very different. And
yeah,
but that's kept it interesting for you as well.
Yeah, it was pretty unlabelable, and so it was kind of difficult for people to describe it. And it was too intense and too intelligent and too full of lyrics. The lyrics are just like, both his parents were school teachers. He had an incredible vocabulary, and man, he could come up with a mouthful of lyrics that would just set the hair back on your back of your head, like, whoa. And I'll tell you a secret. The lyrics were never really done till the recording.
Really?
Yeah. So we would go in there, we would start, okay, well, this is what I want. This is what I want. And he had half the lyrics, and then he would listen to how we did stuff. And, he would tailor everything just like we could. And so it was always the breath of fresh air was when it was pressed and recorded. It meant that it would never change again.
But what was it like? You know, you start in 1977, 78, 1995, Halloween 1995 is the last Boingo gig.
Yeah.
What was that like, falling off a cliff? I mean, what was that like after all that time? It hit the wall kind of thing. And
Well,
what'd you go through?
well, I could, I'm pretty sensitive. I was almost kind of the instigator in the band. I was making sure everybody was in a good mood and being silly, and I was kind of kept the temperature of the band, and I could see it deteriorating, a few years before, and Danny's interest waning, and having to argue a bit more about arrangements and what does this mean and what is this, why are we doing this, and you know so it was, I could see it kind of Danny was getting bored with that format, and he had already, you got him the Pee Wee Herman gig, and he started doing movies, and that's what he wanted to do. And so he had another thing he wanted to conquer in his brain, and that's what those kinds of people do. Frank Zappa, all those other people, they just move on.
I thought it was not to talk about that too long, but I thought if he did the score for the Pee Wee Herman movie, Pee Wee's Big Adventure, that Boingo, we were doing really well on the West Coast. We were doing well in, like, maybe to Denver and so on, but we couldn't get like to New York or anything like that. We'd go there, but it would be maybe 1,000 people, whereas it would be 10,000 in LA. And
Right.
I thought if he does a movie like this and word gets out, it might help the band and help get the word out. But it kind of eventually killed the band. Sorry
Right.
about
Well,
that.
I think the thing that killed the band was that, one of the rules of the road is you go through the town the first time and they go, "Oh man, this is amazing. When are you coming back?" "Oh, not for 2 years." And then they forget about you. So
Yeah.
you have to, the way the band's built up an audience is you have to go back in 3 months. And so they were asking you, "Mike, we want them back in 3 months, 4 months." "Well, Danny doesn't want to come back. We're going to start working on a new album." And so that's what kind of, I think, kept our audience small out of the LA area, because you got to work the road, and
And there's one factor also was that the band was so intricate that the formula in those days, maybe still now, would be to get an opening slot with a big band like the Police or whoever it might be, and people get to know you that way, and then you come back by yourself. But bands loved Oingo Boingo, but you were so intricate, and you had so much equipment, and 8 people and sometimes 12 people, that the headliner after a couple of shows would say, "You got to go home, guys. We can't keep up with you." So it wasn't a musical decision. It was difficult for the headliner to do what they wanted to do, because Boingo was, so big and involved.
Sure, that's absolutely true.
So it was one of the reasons. But then we ended up going to Brazil and playing to like 35,000 people or something like that. We had spots around the world. It was kind of funny.
Yeah, Oingo Boingo Former Members got invited to go to Rock in Rio a few years back, and right then Bolsonaro became president, and I couldn't guarantee the band's safety. So I passed on the gig. So we're gonna try to do it again.
Try again. They've taken care of all that stuff. Hopefully. When we were there, all the money had changed. Everybody's money was worthless when we arrived. They had changed everything, and we're like, who's going to come and see these guys? But we went to Sao Paulo first and played 3 nights there. And it was a 7,000 seater, and I think the first night had about 4,000 people. The next night it was sold out, and the next night there were almost riots in the streets trying to get in. So somehow they got the money, and nobody could figure out how they were able to buy the tickets, but it worked. And then to Rio with 35,000 people, it was amazing. It was an amazing trip. But but after it came to an end, were you lost for a while, or did you immediately jump into something?
Yeah, I had started working on a TV show called Culture Clash.
Mm,
They're a comedy group. They were on Fox, and a friend of mine, Tito La Riva, who was originally the lead singer with the Cruzados and the Plugs, they had opened for Boingo back in the day, and they had a couple of hits. And I got asked to be in the house band with Tito. So we were doing a TV show, and right after the band broke up, 95, Tito was touring Europe. So I toured Europe for about 6 years, from
wow.
95 to 9/11. That's what I call it. And all through that time we played Europe. I fell in love with Germany, and just had such a great time. And when 9/11 happened, I was so frightened, I stopped touring. I said, no, I'm gonna stay home now,
Mm,
because I figured it was
understandable.
time to stay home. So I started getting back into playing big bands and recording, and uh, I waited 10 years. 2005, I figured it was time enough. People always bugged me everywhere I went. When's Oingo Boingo want to play? When can we hear Oingo Boingo music again? So 2005, I got together with Bear and Brendan and Rhea and reluctantly Sam and Steve. They didn't want to do it at first. They did not want to do it, and they didn't want to play the hits. It was a whole psychological thing for them, because they were like, "Oh, Danny doesn't want us to do this. We shouldn't be doing this." I go, "Come on, it's just we're just a club band. Don't worry about it."
Yeah.
And so after a while, they got comfortable with it, and we've been playing. We play like 2-3 times a year in
Yeah.
the LA area, and that's kind of enough, you know. The fans love it, and we love it, and as long as we have a full club, it's okay with me, you know.
Yeah. And of course, you got to play on Halloween.
Got to play on Halloween,
Yeah.
because
That's Christmas to Boingo fans.
it is. It's like playing St. Patty's Day and playing Irish music, you know.
Uh,
It's like playing a trail or a hoot that Harry.
Boy,
Yeah,
those concerts were something else. They were just, the fans would stand up when you guys came on stage, and they didn't sit down until you left the stage. I mean, it was just phenomenal. Energy
yeah.
was incredible.
Now it's only half because they're too old to stand up all the way through it. Like me, I don't
Yeah.
go anywhere. I don't go anywhere unless I can sit down.
That's why you play drums. You can sit down.
That's right. I get to sit down.
Did you come from a musical family? I mean, where did the drums come about?
No, well, my cousins played guitar, and they had a band when I was in 8th grade, and they needed a drummer. And so they said, as soon as you can play Wipeout, you can join the band. So it took me about a month to learn it, and I joined the band. That was it.
That's cool. Now, but speaking of family, I mean, Freddie Hernandez is in Former Members, right? That's
Yeah, Freddie, because John's so world famous, you know, he can't make it all the time. And so one time Freddie John comes to me, goes, "I'm gonna be going playing with Neil Young, man. I gotta go." I go, "All right, don't worry about it." So I looked at Freddie, I go, "Freddie, you ready to play?" He goes, "Yeah." I go, "Do you know this music?" He looked at me and laughed. He goes, "I've been listening to this music since I was 5 years old.
yeah,
Of course I know it." And we just counted out the tunes, and Freddie knew them all,
just fit right in. That's great.
just fit right in.
Well, that's cool.
In fact, Freddie was in the kids choir on our farewell show.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was sitting up there, and so was Larissa
Oh,
and
cool.
Lila Avila.
Yeah.
They were with them, all part of the kids choir.
It's all family still.
Yeah.
But so if you're not from a musical family, did you take lessons, or did you just start playing?
No, I had some great teachers. I studied with a rudimental teacher in high school, and then I met Freddie Gruber, and and he was one of the best drum teachers in the world, taught everybody I know, famous people. And he really helped me out a lot.
That's great. That's a good start.
Yeah.
No kidding. Just speaking on the drummer world, and I know this is kind of a cliche question, but I've never asked you. A favorite drummer. I would start with between Gene Krupa and Buddy Rich. Which one would you pick, or is there another one that just overshadows them?
Well, there's certain things that go on in my brain, and I love them both.
Well, we know that.
Yeah, and there is no drummer that I haven't stolen something from that I admire, and maybe after this break, I'll tell you my Buddy Rich story that I told to a bunch of drummers tomorrow.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, we're going to go into a commercial, and a little bit of music's going to take us in there.